Let me guess, you want to buy your first drone and you don't know which one to get. This is an exciting one today, guys. Talking about the Air 65 versus the Air 75. Now, I've been flying FPV for just about 2 months now. I started in the simulator and then got the Air 65 II Freestyle as my first real life drone. This thing has been an absolute blast. Just this week though, I got the Air 75 II Race Edition. So now we need to find out which one's better, the Air 65 or the Air 75, and which one should you get. In this video, we're gonna be comparing the two drones, talking about the pros and cons of each, how the flying feels, and which one I personally recommend. This comes with a huge disclaimer that I am literally a newbie to FPV. So my opinion strictly comes from my own experience because these are the only two drones that I've flown. And this comes with the caveat that they're different trims. One is the Freestyle and one is the Race Edition, so it's not a true apples to apples comparison. But if you're trying to decide between a 65mm or a 75mm, I think this video should help. First, let's talk about the Air 65 II Freestyle. This little tiny whoop comes with a 65mm frame, 0702 25,000 kV motors. The props are 31mm. It only weighs 17 grams. And then both the Air 65 and the Air 75 IIs run on ELRS with a 25 to 400 milliwatt VTX power output. Now to the Air 75 II Race Edition, we're running a 75mm frame with 0802 25,000 kV motors. Now you will notice the two drones I'm comparing both have 25,000 kV motors, but the only difference is the Air 65 is 0702 and the Air 75 is 0802. On the Air 75 with these motors, you'll notice that adds a lot more punch and thrust. The props are 40mm and the drone itself is 21 grams. Additionally, Air Series tiny whoops from BetaFPV are recommended to use the Lava 2 1S batteries. The Air 65 supports two sizes of battery, 280 milliamp and 320 milliamp. For my Air 65, I opted for the 320 milliamp. They hold slightly more power, but are a little bit heavier. As for the flight time of the Air 65, the way I fly, or maybe it's the way I charge my batteries, I only maybe get 4 minutes out of this battery. Generally, I land at about the 3 to 3.5 minute mark. The Air 75 also supports two sizes of the Lava 2 1S batteries. These are the 480 milliamp and 580 milliamp batteries. I got the 580 milliamp ones. Now I haven't truly tested the flight time of this, but I have noticed that I've reached that 3 to 4 minute mark without having to land. So I would estimate we're looking about the 5-minute range, at least for how I fly. So on paper, the Air 75 II is bigger and faster and more powerful, but specs don't tell the whole story, so let's find out how they actually feel to fly. Starting with the Air 65 II, this thing is super nimble, super playful, super forgiving. It's great for flying indoors, and in my opinion, I think it's easier to hit tight gaps with the Air 65. So the pros, it's super light. It's really easy to fly in tight spaces if you have good stick control. It feels fun and casual, and it gives you confidence while you fly. Now the cons for me mostly come when I'm flying outdoors with it. Because it's so light, if it's windy outside, you'll really notice it getting pushed around in the wind. It feels kind of weak when you're in big open areas and you want to go fast. This might be because of the Freestyle trim of it. The Race and Champion editions will go faster, and because of the smaller battery, you can feel that there's less power. The biggest pro of the Air 65 though is its durability. I've had it for 2 months and crashed it every single time I've flown. I've only cracked the canopy once, and there's one small crack in the frame, and I haven't even replaced the frame yet because I can't even notice it. I've crashed it straight into the side of my car, rammed it into rocks. I don't know. I've had plenty of crashes where I felt like I actually broke something, but I didn't. Because it's so light and small, it can really put up with a lot. Now let's talk about the Air 75. I've been flying with it for just a few days, but what I can immediately tell is this thing is fast. The first time I flew with it, I launched into the sky so much faster than I've ever gone with the Air 65. This might be because it's the race edition, but needless to say, there was a lot of power. My first time taking it out, it was a really breezy evening, and with gusts of wind up to 10 miles per hour, I wasn't even noticing it getting pushed around. So those are some of the pros. It handles the outdoor flying significantly better than the Air 65. It carries a lot of speed, and when flying at fast speeds, I feel really smooth and stable. Now for the cons, this is gonna be harder to fly inside. It's gonna be harder in tight spaces. I was having a tough time hitting the small gaps that I normally would on the Air 65. It's probably just a skill issue. So it's kind of funny, the cons of the Air 75 are actually pros if you're flying outside. So what are the main differences between the Air 65 and the Air 75? Obviously, size is the main difference. The 65 is smaller than the Air 75, and because of that difference alone, they can handle different environments better. The Air 65 does better in small spaces, but works great outside when the conditions are right. The Air 75 is a little bit tougher in small spaces, but can handle the varying conditions of outdoor flying. The Air 65 is basically indestructible. The Air 75, although I haven't broken anything on it yet, it crashes a lot harder when you go down, which makes it more susceptible to damage. The Air 65 is pretty zippy. The Air 75 is fast though. The Air 65's battery life is shorter than the Air 75's battery life, just because of the sole reason that the Air 75 can carry a larger battery. As far as fun factor go though, both are awesome. They each have their own place and where I think I should fly them. Now, the biggest question that everybody goes online to find out, especially when they're buying their first drone, is which one should you buy? Should you buy the Air 65 or should you buy the Air 75? If you've researched other videos, it basically comes down to where are you going to fly it? But I'll give you my personal experience on this. I started with flying in the simulator before getting my first drone, which was the Air 65. This was the perfect first drone. The Air 65 was phenomenal. I actually planned on flying primarily indoors, but when I finally got it, I actually almost exclusively flew outside. The weather where I live is relatively sunny all year long though, so I can fly outside pretty frequently, but even when I would fly it indoors, I loved that it could accommodate both. I do not regret starting with the Air 65 as my first drone. However, I got the Air 75, and after flying it outside, I think from now on, when I fly outside, I will be flying the Air 75. It's super powerful, super fast, and it could handle the wind and breeze no problem. At the end of the day, neither one is better than the other. It just depends on where you're gonna fly, just like everybody else says. If this is your first drone and you plan on flying it inside at all, I would honestly go for the Air 65. The Air 65 can handle the indoor environment so much better than the Air 75 would, and it is still a blast to fly outside, do not get me wrong. You could even bump up from the Freestyle version that I have to the Race or Champion Edition and get some extra power for when you're flying outside. If you're primarily flying outside, get the Air 75. It is an absolute blast. One thing I will say though, if you really are torn and you think you want the Air 75 but you're worried about flying inside, you can get the Air 75 and have the larger frame and all the power that you want. But if you're flying somewhere where you think the power is too much, you can bump your throttle down so max power is the same as the Air 65. So really, if you're flying indoor, you can almost match what the Air 65 is gonna feel like. So don't hate me, I didn't give you a super clear answer. I would probably get the Air 75, but let me know down in the comments which drone you think is better, the Air 65 or the Air 75. Do not forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok here at Alec_Searle. I'm posting a lot of videos there throughout the week. I love making these videos, so subscribe. Thanks for watching.